Good evening, my name is Angelica Gomez, and the disease I will be talking about today is elephantiasis, which is also associated with lymphatic filariasis, and according to the National Organization of Rare Diseases, it has affected many individuals. The transmission of elephantiasis is caused by 3 different types of filarial worms, known as the Wucheria bancrofti, which is right here in this picture, and then Brugia malii and Brugia timori. And first and foremost, elephantiasis is not contagious, but it's easy to get. And do any of y'all know how you get elephantiasis? Yes? No. How? Elephantiasis is transmitted by a mosquito because the mosquito will ingest microfilariae from an infected host, and then once the mosquito has a microfilariae, it will develop into a mature larva. Then the mosquito host, which will then make the larva go into the person, and it will travel in the bloodstream, then make its way to the lymphatic system. Once it gets to the lymphatic system, the larva will mature into adult worms, and people do not see any signs or symptoms until 6 to 8 years, which will then lead to a chronic disease. Adult worms have a lifespan of roughly 7 years. Then they will continue the reproduction, making more microfilariae, which will then continue the cycle of elephantiasis, and it will also prolong the infection. Alright, this picture right here is a good example of what I talked earlier about the transmission of elephantiasis. So right here, it talks about how a mosquito bites a human that doesn't have the disease. And then right here, the adult, like the larva, is put into the blood, and then it will travel into the lymphatic system, which will then lead to adult worms, which will then reproduce a lot of microfilariae. And then the mosquito will bite the infected person, which will then they'll carry the microfilariae. And then in the mosquito, the microfilariae will develop into the mature larvae, making it easy for it to transmit it to a person who doesn't have the disease. Overall, this picture just sums up the cycle of transmission. Alright, here are some chronic conditions and how they interfere with normal pathophysiology. Lymphatic filariasis worsens into elephantiasis, which is hardening of the skin and growing of the skin. And then it also develops into lymphedema, which is enlargement and swelling of tissues. And also it can lead to loiasis, which is where the worm crosses the eyes, leading to conjunctivitis. And then encephalitis is when the worms make it to the brain, causing severe headaches, insomnia, and even death. Alright, so these pictures right here are pictures of elephantiasis, and these are the end result of the disease. Right here, it talks about how elephantiasis interferes with the normal pathophysiology. So the lymphatic system works together with the body's immune system, and white blood cells are sent through the blood to circulate and then fight off diseases. When lymphatic filariasis or elephantiasis develops, it targets the lymphatic vessels, which then lead to the white blood cells not being able to attack any future diseases. My next slide, I'll be talking about populations and how people living in tropical areas are in higher risk of being able to develop elephantiasis because there's more mosquitoes. And some of the regions where mosquitoes transmit elephantiasis are Southeast Asia, India, Africa, and South America. People who suffer from elephantiasis also suffer of low income because they're disabled and can't really work, which then they can't provide like for themselves and they can't continue their medication. You can also see a decrease in their mental health because some of them are isolated because people think that because you're around them and stuff like that, you'll get the disease, when you really only get the disease if the disease is like transmitted. Continuing on to the slide I was just talking about populations. Elephantiasis, you can see, or elephantiasis can cause a decline in marriages because sometimes, or in some of these regions where people are infected with elephantiasis, there's still the gender roles. And so women who have elephantiasis cannot complete their like duty work that they have or housework that they have, and they can't provide for their kids. So a lot of men don't want to marry someone who has elephantiasis. And then for men who have elephantiasis, since they are seen as the people who bring in most of the money for the household, they can't work because of this disease, which will also cause someone not to want to start a future with them. Alright, this slide right here is for medication, and there has been studies done that say that taking these 3 different types of medicine will help get rid of the filarial worms. And the 3 medicine is albendazole, ivermectin, and diethylcarbamazine citrate. And taking all 3 of them will also give you faster results. And then they've also concluded that chemotherapy is a good method to control the disease but not actually kill the worm. This is my last slide for elephantiasis. Disease prevention is very important to try to minimize the amount of cases each year. Using nets, spraying of insecticides, and protective clothing can help minimize the transfer of the lymphatic filarius and also stop the spread. Proper hygiene, exercise, and elevation of limbs can help minimize the progression of the disease. Thank you for watching. I hope you have a good understanding of what elephantiasis is, and if you have any questions, please comment down below.